PolarX's project is in south central Alaska. It's a copper gold project. We have a number of high grade copper resources already outlined. So the southern one there, Caribou Dome, is nearly 3 million tonnes at 3% copper. And then the Zackley Skarn deposit is just over 3 million tonnes at about 1.2% copper and 2 grams per tonne gold. Our focus over the next sort of 3 to 4 months is twofold. One is to increase the size of that Zackley resource. We believe if we can double or triple the size of that, we'll have something that's going to be economically of significant interest. But we've also got a couple of very large porphyry copper targets, notably at Saturn and at Mars. And I guess the big news in the last few weeks is we've just executed a strategic partnership with Lundin Mining Corporation from Canada. And Lundin will have just subscribed for about $4.3 million in PolarX, and they are now the largest single shareholder. So the money that's gone in will be used to fund the program on those porphyry targets. And at the same time, we announced a rights issue, a 1-for-7 rights issue. So the record date for that was last week. The formal documentation will go out to shareholders tomorrow, and I believe that closes on Thursday next week, which I think is the 27th. So it's live. That's going to raise about another $4.2 million. So effectively, the use of funds there is the 4.3 that Lundin have put in will go into porphyry exploration, and I'll explain why that is. And then the funds. A large proportion of the funds that we raise through the rights issue will go into our own drilling program at Zackley. So this slide here just sort of shows a breakdown of the project area. I've just highlighted there, what we've done is we've split the Alaska Range project into two. So we have the Stellar project in the north, which is the porphyry copper opportunity, and then the Caribou Dome project in the south. So the strategic partnership with Lundin excludes Caribou Dome. It also excludes that area outlined in red here, which is a group of 10 claims which hosts the Zackley Skarn. So Zackley remains 100% PolarX. The whole Caribou Dome project remains 100% PolarX. But the remainder of the Stellar project is part of this strategic partnership with Lundin. As I said, the use of funds there, the $4.3 million, will be largely used this year to explore the Saturn and Mars porphyries, and we'll have a look at those in a little while to see what got Lundin so excited. And what we want to do is, by the end of this year, get them to a decision point whether they then enter into a 3-year earning. And this slide here sort of summarises the way this partnership is structured. So basically, year one, which is this year, it's a $4.3 million exploration program on Saturn and Mars, with the milestone being identification of geology, alteration or mineralisation consistent with a porphyry system that is to their satisfaction to then want to enter into an earning joint venture. If they do that, so we've got to make that decision by 31 December this year. If they make that decision, they then go into effectively a series of 1-year options. In the first year, they make a cash payment to us of $2 million at the start of the year, and then have to put $8 million into the ground. Those are US millions. So almost $3 million of cash will come to PolarX in January next year if they elect to go into that first year of earning. They then have to spend $8 million in the ground on porphyry exploration in that first year to have the right to then go into year two. And if they exercise that right to go into year two, it's $3 million cash to PolarX by the end of January, and then another $8 million in the ground. And similarly, if they wish to go into year three, it's $5 million cash to PolarX up front and another $8 million in the ground. And if at the end of that they found something that they like, then they have the right to form a 51-49 JV by giving us another $10 million in cash. And then it's a 51-49 contributing JV. We'll obviously have at least $10 million in our tin at that point. And so the likely first or second work program going forward will be able to fund our share. And that's partly the reason why it's been structured in this way, is we've worked with Lundin and said, you know, we want to get to the point where, as a 49% shareholder, we're a contributing shareholder. We don't intend to be diluted down below 49% to the extent that we can. When you look at our corporate register, you'll see we've got JP Morgan and Ruffer on the register, US Global, and those three, we think by the end of the rights issue, will be close to between 25 and 30% of the company. We obviously have some big hitters there that are able to continually fund PolarX to allow it to meet its share. Now, obviously, that assumes success and assumes that we actually find something. But if we do, Lundin have potentially got 51% of a world-class deposit for, as you can see the numbers there, effectively $47 million US. But PolarX has got 49% of something very significant without having to spend another cent, because we've basically fully funded on that program. We don't have to contribute anything. In fact, we get $20 million US cash on the way. So it puts us in a very, very strong position. We can use that $20 million cash to forward work at Zackley, and or use it to contribute to our 49% when we get to that point. The cash payments here at the beginning of each year basically give Lundin the right to terminate at any point. So really, they're not putting anything more than the initial cash payments, and each year, that's really all they're committing. So if we keep seeing things that are good, they'll keep rolling forward on a year-by-year basis. If they don't, they can withdraw, but they have to have paid us cash at the beginning of that year. So this map just shows where the project is. It's about a 6-hour drive out of Anchorage. Good quality sealed road for 90% of that. It's in an area that's a known porphyry copper belt, so we're in the right geology. We're about, I suppose, 30 k's south of the main Tintina gold belt. So the Tintina gold belt is where Northern Star recently bought the Pogo mine. They're now 100% owner of that. Donglin, which is another world-class gold deposit, is going through the final phases of permitting and likely to be in construction very shortly. And then, this large porphyry belt that we sit in hosts projects such as Pebble, which is the world's biggest undeveloped copper and gold project, with nearly 37 million tonnes of copper metal and 107 million ounces of gold in that deposit. That's going through an extended permitting process, and that belt extends through our Alaska Range project and then down into British Columbia, Yukon, and down into Montana in the lower 48 states, and hosts other deposits such as Highland Valley and Butte in Montana. So there are a number of world-class porphyry deposits within this belt. That's just a view of the sort of the scenery that's stood on Zackley looking towards Mars. You can see Mars has got a very big colour anomaly at surface, reasonably rugged terrain, but certainly very accessible with helicopters. No problems with drilling that when we get to that point. The geology, I won't say much about that, I've sort of covered it. Probably 90% of our project tenure occurs in the porphyry belt, and maybe 10% in the Tintina gold belt. Our focus is very much in the porphyry belt. You can see here there's a very pronounced northwest trending structure which intersects the terrain boundary in the northern part of the overall project. So the Stella project, the area where we've done the JV with Lundin, there's this very strong structural corridor which intersects the terrain boundary, and there's a whole bunch of intrusions that we've interpreted in government magnetic data. And if we flick back to this slide, you can see it's associated with a very large copper in soils anomaly. That copper in soils anomaly is about 17 kilometres long and 6 to 7 kilometres across at over 250 ppm copper. So that's a huge copper anomaly, and something that we think may represent a district rather than just a single deposit. Zooming in, I'm just going to zoom in here on the area between these two arrows, because that's a very pronounced west-northwest trending structural corridor. In the middle of it, we have Zackley. Zackley is a high-grade copper-gold skarn. Skarns are deposits that form when fluids from an intrusion that may be a porphyry copper deposit react with limestone. And you get very diagnostic minerals and mineralisation, and that's exactly what we have at Zackley. It's a classic skarn, and it's got some fabulous results. The last year's drilling, the eastern part of that outside of the resource, we were hitting 50-metre true width intersections at nearly 3 grams per tonne gold and 0.5% copper. Those are still open-ended, so we know exactly where we're going to be drilling this year on Zackley to increase the size of that resource, and we're pretty confident that another 20 or 25 holes into that will get us to line of sight to well in excess of the 3.5 million tonnes that we've already got outlined there. Then what you can see to the southeast of that is this very prominent magnetic anomaly. So the background data here is airborne magnetics that we collected in October last year, high resolution helicopter survey. It's this that's got Lundin, I think, very interested. They see this as the highest priority target on the project, and this is the one that will be the focus of a drilling campaign that we hope to kick off in about 5 or 6 weeks' time. So Saturn, the magnetic data there is showing that it's a series of nested intrusive bodies. We believe they're intrusive. It's under about 15 to 20 metres of glacial till, so basically loose boulders and sands that have been washed out from glaciers. So it's blind to geochemistry, but not blind to geophysics. We're planning an IP survey over that to commence in a couple of weeks' time, and a combination of the magnetic data and the IP data will put together a drilling program for that. We're just talking to 5 different drilling companies now about getting tenders in to select who's our preferred drill contractor, and we aim to have that underway before the end of July. At the other end of that structural corridor there is Mars, and I've just overlain on this image detailed soil geochemistry. So at Mars there is a number of high magnetic features which we think might also be intrusions, and particularly at the Mars prospect itself, a very convincing copper, gold, moly and arsenic in soil anomaly, and those are your classic porphyry pathfinder elements. So that corridor really is the one that's going to be the focus of this year's fieldwork, both funded by the rights issue, so work on Zackley itself, and then Saturn and possibly Mars using the funding from Lundin. As I said, the goal of Lundin is to get enough information by December 31 to determine whether they want to exercise that option for the 3-year earning. And obviously we're working with them. We formed a joint exploration committee. They have 3 members, we have 2. We had the first exploration committee meeting a week ago on Thursday. We've decided we've amended the IP program to be larger than I originally planned, and to see deeper. And we've already planned the first 2 drill holes, and there'll be another probably 6 to 8 drill holes planned once we have the IP data back. I'm just going to talk a little bit about Zackley now, and then I'll go on to sort of finish on Saturn in particular. So at Zackley, we've got about 3.5 million tonnes. The dashed red line there, this is a drill plan. So the dashed red line on the left there is the surface projection of the mineralisation. It's about 1 kilometre long, and that's the 3.5 million tonnes. Last year we drilled underneath that and got more intersections, so we know it extends down dip. And we also drilled further to the east, and that's where we got, particularly right out in the east, those really thick, high-grade intersections. Most of it is subvertical, true width of about 5 to 6 metres. So an underground mining proposition. We'll leave a crown pillar where there's a little bit of surface oxidation, but then predominantly into high tenor copper sulfides. And the sulfides here are dominated by bornite and chalcocite. So you'll potentially get a very high-grade concentrate from this material. A lot of the gold is coarse-grained and free milling. So a gravity circuit followed by flotation. We think we'll get very good recoveries here, and that's the way to maximise revenue. We've got a MET program that'll kick off in the next month or so that'll hopefully confirm that. As we move further to the east, right at the east, we see the mineralisation has now been overturned, and we're getting much thicker, almost at surface, 55 to 45 metre thick intersections. So there's a lot of potential here for open pit mineralisation at the eastern end. The magnetic data that we collected has been very useful for targeting more drill holes. You can see the mineralisation sits on a very, very strong magnetic gradient, and we've got that image now in 3D, and we're in the process of planning another 15 or 20 holes as the start of our program for Zackley for this year. So we're very confident that the funding that we'll get from the rights issue could be put to very good use here to significantly increase the size of the Zackley resource. And the reason we want to do that is, if for whatever reason the JV with Lundin doesn't go ahead, if Saturn is killed through drilling and Mars doesn't stack up, then we've at least materially advance exactly, so that we've not wasted a field season. I'm going to move on to Saturn now, because Saturn's what really has got everybody quite excited. As I said before, it looks like from the magnetic data that we've got a series of nested intrusive bodies there. You can see it's surrounded by a zone where the magnetite content of the rock has been completely obliterated, which suggests that this is an intrusive cluster with magmatic hydrothermal fluids which have escaped and reacted with the surrounding host rocks and destroyed the magnetite. That's sort of what one would expect from a porphyry based on what the textbooks tell you should happen. As I said, it's blind until we drill it. We don't know what we get, but what we do like about it, not only the size and the shape, but also the proximity to Zackley. It's about 3 kilometres away from Zackley, and as we move from west to east in the mineralisation at Zackley in the drilling, we're seeing increasing grades, increasing thickness, and increasing degrees of alteration. So all the vectors are pointing towards that Saturn target, and that's why we like it. I think that's why Lundin like it. And when we've modelled it in 3D, it really does come out as quite an impressive body. This is the inversion modelling of that detailed magnetic data, and shows that Saturn, can be modelled all the way down to at least 3 kilometres. That's the bottom of our model. It forms a nice upward flaring cylinder, which is exactly the sort of geometry you would hope to see in a cluster of porphyry intrusions. And we can see that it's spatially related to that very strong gradient between magnetically high rocks and low magnetic rocks, and the mineralisation exactly is right on that contact. So there's nice sort of 3D linkage there. And I just wanted to pull this one up because it sort of gives you an idea of what it is we're looking for. So same image on the right-hand side there. I was in New York about a week ago, so I've put the Empire State Building on there at exactly the same scale. And that's this little, I can get my point, and that's this little tiny thing down here. That's 400 metres tall. So this whole thing is huge. It's, as I said, over 3 kilometres in vertical extent. Probably more importantly, this block diagram here is the Grasberg igneous complex at exactly the same scale, as much as you can do on a PowerPoint. So Grasberg, one of the world's greatest porphyry copper deposits, the igneous complex there has got a surface area of about, I guess, 2,500 metres by 1,500 metres. Saturn is about 2,000 by 1,000, so similar in size, both upward flaring cylinders. But I guess the important thing is the mineralisation at Grasberg is only in that central sort of 950 metres. So within our 2 by 1 kilometre, there's multiple chances of a Grasberg being there, and we know it's not all going to be mineralised. So, I would expect there to be multiple intrusions of different ages and different degrees of mineralisation, and that's hopefully what will tie down in the first 10 or 15 drill holes. Is we'll get an idea of the different styles of the intrusions and the alteration, and hopefully mineralisation associated with them. And then the little plan view here shows this is the Grasberg igneous complex, and then 3 kilometres away is the Erzberg skarn. So it's almost exactly an analogy for what we have, exactly being 3 kilometres away from Saturn. We just don't know that Saturn is a Grasberg. We're hoping it is, but it's completely undrilled. As I said, it's blind to geochemistry. The only way to find out is get some drill holes into it, and now we're fully funded to get that work done this year. So the remaining work there really is to do an IP survey. The thin blue lines on this map show my original plan. We've actually extended those. We've reduced the number of lines, but extended them out further so that we'll see deeper. We hope that work will be underway in a couple of weeks' time. The goal is to be able to see down to 400 to 500 metres depth there and drill holes to similar depths. So we're looking at drilling somewhere between 8 and 10 holes to an average of 500 metres depth, and that should it should give us at least enough geological information for Lundin Mining to make their decision by the end of this year. So that's the first goal. Second goal, as I said, is to get one of the drill rigs onto Zackley and also drill additional mineralisation at Zackley. Obviously, if things are going really well at Saturn and we start drilling thick zones of mineralisation, the good thing with porphyries is you can see the mineralisation. It's usually pretty visual. We'll just keep drilling there. We don't have a maximum hole depth plan. We've agreed if we're in mineralisation, we keep drilling until we run out of drill rods. So that's the goal. Just a little bit about Mars. Mars has got a nice geophysical anomaly. It's got a magnetic high. That magnetic high is in the middle of a 1400 metre by 800 metre copper gold moly arsenic anomaly. And we did some IP on that in late 2017, and we've got an IP anomaly that's coincident with the geochem. And at surface, we've got up to 7% copper and 7 grams per tonne gold in rock chips and little veins and fissures. So the surface geochem is just saying that there's some form of mineralised system there. We don't know exactly what it is. That's something that will be drilled. Probably only drilled this year if we do drilling at Saturn and kill Saturn. But so that one, Mars may not get drilled this year if we've got good positive success at Saturn itself. So timeline there, we're already into June. We're planning on getting the IP survey underway within the next couple of weeks. Basically just waiting for the contractor now to tell us when crew is available, and then we can get them out to site. The accommodation's all sorted out. Helicopter is all sorted out. And then we plan to get into a drilling campaign. Aim to start that by the 3rd or 4th week of July, and then drill through till late September, early October. So about a 10-week drilling campaign. Goal is to get 5,000 metres of drilling done at Saturn, plus or minus Mars, and then ideally a couple of thousand metres into Zackley as well.